Hello, I'm Jay Leibowitz, and as part of the DeSanto Chair Distinguished Lecture Series in Financial Literacy, we're very pleased to have Mary Johnson, who's the Director of Financial Literacy and Student Aid Policy at Higher One in the New Haven area. And she's going to provide some additional insights into financial literacy education, which will be of interest to not only our Harrisburg University college community, but to those in the local community as well as in the secondary schools.
Hi, my name is Mary Johnson. I'm Director of Financial Literacy and Student Aid Policy for Higher One in New Haven, Connecticut.
So since we're talking about financial literacy, and everyone has a different definition, would you mind just describing how you view financial literacy?
Sure, absolutely, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, when you talk about financial literacy, there is a lot of definitions out there, and it can be very broad, but I'm kind of a bucket person, and I like to break it down sort of simply, particularly when I'm talking to students, and it's really three major things. And the first is always being responsible for your money and knowing where it is. I mean, hopefully it's somewhere safe, not under your mattress somewhere, hopefully in something like a bank account or whatever, and not relying on somebody else to take care of your money, making sure you understand what's coming in and what's going out in your family, your household. The second thing of being financially literate is really understanding complex financial concepts and as well as products. So for example, the whole issue of compound interest, a lot of students don't understand that, so it's really important to explain the benefits of that and the benefits of time and compounding interest over time to be able to build savings. It's also understanding financial products such as their student loans, credit cards, debit cards, a car loan. Even a rental agreement is a financial product that comes with a lot of red tape and things that you have to understand in terms of your obligations. And I always tell students, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions. No question is too stupid, if you will, or anything like that. No, definitely ask questions. And if you still don't understand after you ask those questions, then it's a good idea to kind of walk away before you sign for any kind of financial product until you feel comfortable that you know what you're doing. And sort of the last rule of financial literacy is using that knowledge, being responsible, and then using that knowledge that you have about financial products and concepts, and being able to use that to make good decisions for yourself and for your family.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I know that you are one of the key architects of the Money Matters on Campus report, and it came out this version this past year, earlier in the year 2014. And could you kindly highlight some of the key points from
Sure.
some of the key findings from the report?
I mean, as you know, Money Matters on Campus, which we actually published in April, was a survey of 65,000 first-time college students across the country, mainly at four-year institutions. And we did the study to be able to really identify or find out more about the attitudes and behaviors of as far as money for students first coming into college. Not only to help us better understand the kinds of challenges that students face, but also to help colleges and universities maybe understand some of the risk factors associated with students that are coming into campus maybe a little bit underprepared to manage money while they're on their own. So the interesting thing about the study was we were able to identify sort of 7 key financial factors that students sort of fell into, ranging from somebody being very cautious about debt to someone who really exhibited sort of compulsive spending behaviors. And we were interested, once we identified those factors, to see whether or not they actually could help us predict behaviors, financial behaviors, such as paying bills on time or paying back their student loans. And it was really interesting. Some of those factors were really good predictors of those kinds of behaviors, and I think there's a lot more that we can learn from taking a look at those. The other interesting thing was that we were able to do this year was we actually looked at the responses to students who came from states that required a financial literacy course as part of high school graduation requirement. And what we found that students who came from those states actually not only exhibited, knew more about financial literacy knowledge questions, but they also were much more financially positive in terms of their behaviors and attitudes. So that was kind of an aha moment for us to say, hey, you know, maybe this is something that we should be offering more at the high school level before students get there. That doesn't mean that colleges and universities are necessarily going to be off the hook, but that was an aha moment. The other thing we discovered, which may or may not be surprising, is that none of the students, no matter, you know, we looked at all kinds of demographic breakdowns, did really that well on financial knowledge questions. So there's a way to go in terms of bringing students even up to speed on some basic financial concepts, even things like compound interest or things like that I mentioned earlier. The other thing that wasn't probably too surprising, but I wanted to point out, was there was a big gender difference. And the reason why that's important is that if you're developing a financial literacy program on campus, you really have to be cognizant of that and make sure that you design a program that really reaches both genders. So in the case of our study findings, we found, for example, that men, while they had more financial knowledge, were less financially responsible when it came down in terms of their actual behaviors. Whereas on the women's side, while they generally maybe didn't do as well on the knowledge questions, they were much more financially responsible in terms of the way that they handled their money. So that was some interesting things there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're very interested in sponsoring research like this, because I think the best way to make a good argument and the act of persuasion is to really have good data about what's happening and what works and what doesn't work. And a lot more work needs to be done in the area of financial literacy education to see what does work and where. I know from experiences of my own, as well as working with colleges and universities, it's really important that whatever kind of financial literacy program that you are developing is really tuned into today's young adults and what they can want to engage in, and also that it really touches on things that they're facing in their everyday life. So for example, I don't think you'd be very successful talking to a 9th or 10th grader in high school about 401 retirement planning. It's just, it's not something that's going to engage them. But if you teach them how to maybe open a bank account and we don't write a lot of checks, but they still need to know how to do that, and what the difference is between payment types, like a debit card versus a credit card, and then give them real life experiences and maybe how to do that, I think there's a great opportunity there. Again, I think the more you can get a coalition on campuses together, both within your own campus or a group of peer institutions in the area together to talk about the importance of this, I think you can get people to listen.
Very good.
Yeah.
And I know you have lectured and given workshops widely throughout the states and beyond. For our students here at Harrisburg University, could you highlight just a few kind of best practices that our students should keep in mind as they think about this area?
Sure. I think first off, probably a lot of your students here are on financial aid. I would say one of the first smart moves they could make is try to limit the total amount of student loans that they take out. And that just because when they get their financial aid package that it includes a certain amount, if they can think that they can get by with less, they definitely should do that and say, okay, I don't need $4,000, I maybe only need $3,000 or whatever, because that's going to save them in the long run. Another rule of thumb I always tell them is to make sure they understand what their loan obligations are, and then do a little calculation of estimating what their loan payments are going to be when they get out of school, and compare that to like their expected starting salary, because you don't want that monthly loan payment to exceed around 10% of your salary. So that's a really good rule of thumb for them. The other thing, any ways that you can engage students in ways about thinking about their spending and taking what I call those mental moments to maybe look back over their spending habits and see what are the things that I could have done without? What are really things that I have to have, my needs, if you will, versus my wants? In this fast-paced, sort of environment, high-tech environment where we have everything on our mobile phone, nobody balances their checkbook anymore, let alone keep a checkbook. So we have to find innovative ways of getting students to engage in those mental moments and taking the time, because it's so important for them to understand where their money's going, what's coming in, and where their money is going.
Wonderful. And I know that you've talked in the past about different universities like Sam Houston State University and Ohio State, who are doing some innovative things in terms of educating their students in financial literacy.
Yeah, I think in the case of the Ohio State University, what is very interesting about their approach is that they include financial literacy under the umbrella of student wellness, health and wellness. And so that's the approach. They take a more holistic approach, that it's all about, understanding, maybe some psychological pressures that are, facing a student as well. So I think there are some lessons to be learned from the work that they're doing. At Sam Houston State University, they have a full-fledged money management center. And what that means is that they actually have counselors on staff that are certified financial counselors that can work with students one-on-one or in workshops, and students come in and can talk to someone when they think that they're having a problem. But they go one step further, and one successful model, and something you may want to think about, is peer-to-peer mentoring, where students might not be really receptive to talking to an adult, but they might want to hear from somebody who walks in their shoes, a fellow student. So there are training programs out there that you can train peers to actually go out, not only do workshops, but do one-on-one counseling for students, and there's been some success there. I think the key to any successful financial literacy program is really to involve students, not only in the planning of that and the execution of whatever it is you're planning. We have run a grant program called Financial Literacy Counts that provides small seed grants to colleges and universities around the country to start up. And that's one of our requirements, is that students need to be involved in that, because they're the ones that understand how to engage students, how to reach them. They understand what the latest social media outlets are. And I think you can have the most success if you do involve students. The other thing in terms of a successful model is to really involve a cross-campus sort of effort. It can't reside with one person. If you try to do it alone, usually you don't have a lot of success. Particularly in higher education, you know that you have to have collaboration and buy-in from not only staff but faculty as well. And they're also a great source of information and ideas. Even your librarian, I mean, they're great resource finders. So bringing that together into some kind of a task force or whatever, I think you have better chances of really succeeding. And then last but certainly not least is knowing your students and understanding what it is that your students need, what is the issue that you're trying to address, and then whatever it is that you are providing in terms of an educational experience, making sure that you can go back and assess whether you've done a good job or not.
Great. And speaking about assessment, and I know you had just met with our provost, part of Harrisburg University is to embrace this competency-based education approach. And just from your experience, would you be able to just briefly mention what are some of the competencies that you feel would be important in the financial literacy area that our students should know here at Harrisburg University?
Yeah, I think starting at the very beginning is how to manage a bank account. I mean, and looking at that to making sure that you're not overdrafting your account, that kind of thing. I think in terms of, understanding their financial aid package, understanding the difference between loans and grants and limiting them. We talked about that. I think it's also about, sort of measuring students, getting them to understand their money personality, for lack of a better term, so that, if they tend to have compulsive spending habits versus the other end of the spectrum, that they understand that and have them develop triggers on how to control that. We talked about sort of the money rules, but the one rule of thumb that I always talk about is that if you really want financial security in the future, you can't live just within your means. You have to live below your means. And that means getting students to understand that you have to spend less than what you're taking in and putting the rest away. And then learning about what are those opportunities for me down the road. What are the big things that I'm going to have to face as a family down the road that I need to save for. Another big part of financial literacy is understanding how to protect your identity, particularly in this online world where it's easy, and what to do if you think that someone has really, breached your identity, and what steps to take. That's really important. And the whole idea of credit. What is credit? How do I go about getting? Why is it important? How do I protect or grow my credit history so that I have a good credit score? That's really important as well.
Very good.
Just a couple of things, but
very good. Well, we'll close, but I just wanted to give you a chance to talk a little about Hire One and what you all are doing, and so that our students might be able to use Hire One as a key resource in this
Sure.
area.
Yeah.
And any closing comments you'd like to
Great.
make?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, as I mentioned, Hire One is very committed to increasing the financial capability of college students, and that's our primary focus because of, the business we're in. So we try to reach students in a number of different ways. I mentioned that we have a grant program for colleges and universities, but we also have things that we do a direct outreach to students. For example, I run a blog called One for Your Money, where I provide articles, tips, tools, calculators, and things that students can use on things that really matter to them in their day-to-day college life. We also run a Money on My Mind video contest that just opened up a couple of days ago, where students can submit 2-minute videos about their #1 money management challenge while they're in school. And there's a grand prize winner, wins $2,000, and there's other cash prizes as well. And again, it's all about trying to engage students. We also have some partnerships with the Council for Economic Education, who, for example, they're the ones that do the study of the states that require financial literacy. We sponsor them through our corporate giving, and that's to fund teacher training in this area for K-12. And mainly in the greater New York area and New Jersey and Connecticut. But we also have a partnership with Everfi, who is our partner on our grant program, where we sponsored their financial literacy online platform in 40 high schools in 9 states across the country. So that we're actually making sure we're delivering financial literacy education right to students in high school. And those are usually juniors or seniors that are taking that course. We also just announced a partnership with MoneyThink, which is a very innovative peer-to-peer model started out of the University of Chicago. And in that model, it's college students are trained to actually go out into the inner city high schools and mentor students. And it's really sort of an upstart entrepreneurial approach to financial literacy education, I think has a lot of promise. And so we're really excited about sponsoring that. In addition, I do newsletters for students. I also guest blog on the Huffington Post to talk about these issues, so we can try to reach sort of the parent audience, if you will. And as you mentioned, I do workshops on campuses as well as present at conferences as well to try to talk about this important issue. So I guess in closing, I would just say thank you again for having me. I'm very honored to be here. As I mentioned before, I'm very passionate about getting this issue on the table and making sure that whatever we do at Hire One really helps colleges and universities in their ability to reach their students and help them with their money management issues.